This is the life part of Money Life, and I'm going to start first of all by requesting Devashish Basu, our trustee, to escort Justice Sujata Manohar to the stage. May I now request Ms. Aditi Kothari to welcome Justice Sujata Manohar with some flowers, please. As we said in the earlier session, today's event has happened thanks to Aditi Kothari of DSP BlackRock and all the little special things that she's added which are her personal touch to today's event. A couple of points. We are Moneylife Foundation likes to think of itself as the voice of the savers. We are 3 years old. We have a membership of 21,500 and we have trebled our membership in the last year, so I think we're beginning to make a difference. This is the 4th year that Moneylife Foundation has the privilege of honoring women activists who have made a difference. We're lucky that some of them are here with us today, and we hope that this is going to be a tradition that we are going to carry on for a long time to come. The 2 women activists that we are honoring today are Ms. Jyothi Mhapsekar, who is the founder of Stree Mukti Sanghatnana, and I'm going to introduce her shortly, and Meena Seshu of SANGRAM, who's come here all the way from Sangli. Thank you very much, Meena, for taking the trouble to be here with us. Let me start. We'll start with the felicitations first. What I'm going to do is show you a tiny clip of Jyothi Mhapsekar's work. And Jyothi, we have cut it down to 1 minute because the work is so tremendous, and it doesn't make sense if we show the whole thing, but it'll give you a glimpse. She is the writer of this play called Mulgi Zali Ho, which created waves in Maharashtra. It has now been translated to Hindi. We've taken a clip from the Hindi one.
अरे 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 बेटी आई मैं कहाँ जाऊँ बहना मैं कहाँ करूँ बहना बेटी आई वो भी मुझ पे गुस्सा होंगे बेटी आई सास को सेगी ससुर चिढ़ेंगे बेटी आई हाय बेटी आई है बेटी आई है बेटी आई है। अरे बहन जी, अगर दुनिया में इस तरह लड़के ही लड़के पैदा होने लगे तो इस दुनिया का कारोबार चलेगा कैसे? जवाब बिल्कुल आसान। वो कैसे? इसके लड़की पैदा होने दे, इसके लड़की पैदा होने दे, होने दे। और बहन जी, हाँ, उसके भी लड़की पैदा होने दे। ये तो ठीक है, इसके लड़की पैदा होने दे, उसके लड़की पैदा होने दे और उसके भी लड़की पैदा होने दे। और बहन जी, आपके यहाँ? मेरे यहाँ? हाँ, मेरे यहाँ तो बेटा ही चाहिए। देखा आपने, हर एक नारी यही चाहती है, मगर क्यों चाहिए? क्यों? हाँ, क्योंकि बेटा वंश का दीपक कहलाता है। आहा हा हा कितना उजाला कहलाता है। बेटा वंश का दीपक कहलाता है। हाँ। और बेटी के हाथ पीले करने को रुपया जोड़ना पड़ता है। अरे नहीं बहन जी, अपने लड़की को पढ़ाइए, सिखाइए, उसे अपने पाँव पर खड़ी कीजिए। होगा नया समाज, निर्मित होगा नया समाज, निर्मित होगा नया समाज, निर्मित होगा नया समाज।
Very, very tiny glimpse, and this is just a small fraction of what Ms. Mhapsekar does. But one of the things that I discovered is that the world is such a small place. So when I suddenly get this phone call from Kumar Ketkar, very, very eminent journalist, who says that Jyothi is like family. So, who better than Kumar to introduce her? So Kumar, thank you very much for coming here today, and thank you for introducing Jyothi. May I request you to come here, please?
Well, honestly, it is a privilege to be here in the Moneylife Foundation for several reasons. One is Sujata is also quite an old friend and a comrade and a colleague, just as Devashish also is, since we are in the same fraternity. Now it is extremely difficult to introduce Jyothi in 3 to 5 minutes which have been allotted to me. She began her sort of social work, as it were, in in women's organizations, and actually she founded this Stree Mukti Sanghatnana. And soon after founding Stree Mukti Sanghatnana, when they encountered the problem of reaching out to rural women and urban women in the slums, as you know, or perhaps we don't recognize quickly, but more than half the city of Mumbai actually lives in Mumbai's own village called slums. So in those areas, if you want to go out and reach out to those women or into the rural areas, what is required is not giving them speeches and enlightening them on women's rights and women's causes, but actually to go to them through the folk medium. And that's why she began to write. She began to write not out of an inspiration to write, but began to write as a social function. She grew from there, and it's very difficult to, elaborate all that she has done. For instance, I will give you some impressive things which will, be quite perfect to introduce her. For the impressive thing being that she was honored by no less but Mr. Bill Clinton, and not in India but in Washington. She was invited by the Clinton Foundation, and she went there. She was felicitated by the Clinton Foundation. So Clinton Foundation actually felicitated her because the American consulate and American embassy here in India actually found out who was doing the environmental work along with the human rights work, along with the affirmative action, working with women. And all these were combined in Jyothi, because she was doing work on gas from garbage with the help of the scientists in BARC. And she was working with rag pickers and garbage collectors and converting that garbage into first dumps and then using it for making gas. And during that, she was actually promoting the women's cause, because majority of the rag pickers or the garbage collectors are women, and that too from the very oppressed communities, oppressed castes in India and from Mumbai. She has been able to integrate the creative work, the social work, the political work, and even the environmental work. And therefore, by writing this play, she integrated all that, and later on became a founding member of the International Women's Playwright Association. And then she went all over the world, actually, from Greece, Ireland, Turkey, the countries sometimes we don't even know names of. She has gone there, and she has participated in the Women's Playwright Association seminars. She also conducted, she was the leader of the organization of that in Mumbai, in association with Mumbai Vidyapit, Mumbai University. And so apart from the work which you were introduced to, she is also doing such things. And apart from even these two things, she is actually conducting various classes on various issues, from dowry to regular fighting atrocities on women. She has been consistently active and works. I don't know how she handles these multiple tasks. Nowadays the term management has invented is multitasking, but she has been doing this so-called multitasking for easily the number of years that I know her. She writes a play and goes and attends a meeting with the garbage workers, and sitting with those garbage workers is absolutely frightening sometimes, not inspiring at all. And yet she goes there and she performs plays there. Sometimes she makes them also act in the plays, which is quite an amazing thing that she does. I think we must have a great applause for Jyothi, not because she is my family member, because her work is adequately recognized by Clinton Foundation, but now even Moneylife Foundation recognizes her work. And I think that is more a privilege, because that happens right here, because it is our society which needs to be changed, and she is one of the first creative person to work in the field, which is not generally considered fashionable and attractive for young girls to join. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. May I now request Sujata Manohar to present a small plaque to Jyothi on our behalf. I would request Devashish to present her with flowers, please. I'm now going to request Ms. Mhapsekar to say a few words.
Thank you for this felicitation. Kumar has not said, told you one thing, that it is his wife Sharda, who was his classmate. She is the one who inspired me. That's it, okay. Who inspired me to come to women's movement, and she involved me there. Also, it's tragic death of my mother, who was his teacher in 1975. It was accidental death which brought me to the women's movement, because prior to that I was really interested only in playing kho-kho or singing Hindi songs. So I was not interested in the movement at all, because everyone in my family, my uncle, my aunt's husband, so many people were working in Lal Nishan Party, which was really working for organizing unorganized. So many years I was seeing that, and I was really wondering whether I should do that or I should do something else. And then suddenly my mother's death brought me into this movement. But of course I'm happy, and I feel that I could do some justice to whatever she has done, because when I remember her, I feel that she has done so much work, and I have actually not done anything, because I have worked as a librarian in Architecture College for almost 28 years. And doing that, I used to do all this work. But she has done the work, and then there was no monetary benefits from that for her. She was working as a teacher. My father was a full-timer, so she was the only person who was earning. And then I know what hardship she has gone through. And that's why when somebody felicitates me, I always remember her, that she has worked so selflessly, that what I have done is actually nothing. I work with West Speakers, Kumar has said that. That in 1998, because it's not only this work which we have started, the theatre, but after theatre so many people started coming to us as volunteers. And then we started our family counseling centers, which almost we have 6 family counseling centers all over Maharashtra. Then we also have centers. We also have a very large adolescent sensitization program. We have covered almost 5 lakh students so far in many schools where there is no parental guidance to the children. That is the municipal schools or schools from the communities. So when we started that, when we started going to community, we found these West Speakers who are poorest of the poor, and we thought that we must work for them. We started the self-help groups. We were not knowing anything about garbage, because as a working woman, it's like for everyone else it is out of sight, out of mind. And also another attitude is not in my backyard. So I don't know what happens to my garbage, but when I saw dumping ground, I was so shocked. And then I thought, those people who don't segregate at source, instead of fining them, they should be sent to dumping ground and ask them, I should ask them to stand there for 1 hour and let them find what havoc they are making, because they are not segregating at source, because because it is a mixed waste, it cannot be either composted or sent to the biomethanation plant. And there are rules, our environment rules 2000, where it has been the segregation at source is promoted, but municipality is interested only in transporting, like from this side also all the waste goes to dumping ground. So people are only interested in transport. That's why there is no decentralization of the work, there is no segregation at source. So we are really worried about that, and then we thought that if we give some value addition to West Speakers' work, teach them composting and biomethanation. Fortunately, we got this knowledge from BRC scientists, and we started constructing, we bought the technology, we started constructing biogas plants. At present we have almost 10 biogas plants. 600 women are working at many places, segregating. I mean, instead of walking on the road, because nobody should be West Speaker in this modern Mumbai. But why somebody should put their hands? If we can't segregate our 1 kilo waste at our home, how municipality is going to segregate 10,000 tons per day? So I feel that everybody should think about this. And I think that when we think about West Speakers, we should think about not only it's a caste and gender-based activity, and there poverty there, that children are not going to school. When we started work, only not a single girl was going beyond 8th standard. Now at least 1,000 girls have completed their school. They're doing some courses, so that's a good achievement we have. So I feel that this by segregation at source we are and giving it to West speakers, we are really saving their families. So nobody in their family also nobody should be West speaker. And tomorrow's world we won't get any West speakers, because their children will improve and they won't go for your waste. They won't go to the roadside to pick up the waste. So there will be only collectors. So unless and until we cultivate our habits, nothing is going to change. I owe everything to Sri Mukti Sanghatnana, because I can write a play, but somebody has to perform. And unless and until somebody performs, we have done almost 3,000 shows of Mulgi Zaliyo in Marathi and Hindi. It is translated in 6 languages. But unless and until people were there, and there are so many, this all women play. You have seen the clip. So many girls, so many women, their parents trusted us, and they were very dedicated and committed. So it's not one person cannot do everything alone. There are so many people who have really helped us. We are a volunteer-based organization. We have hundreds of volunteers who are helping us in various ways. And I end my speech with just a song which I wrote for Beijing conference, which we performed there in Beijing. So I end my speech with that, which tells about the philosophy of Sri Mukti Sanghatnana. Thank you. समानता है यारा, पर बस नहीं उतना ही, भूख गरीबी वर्ण भेद और हिंसा से ये लड़ाई, निसर्ग मानव हो तभी होगा सफल ये जीवन, विकास समता विश्व शांति का नारा लगाते चले, हम विश्व की महिला नई नई प्रगति की ओर चले, ने कंधों पर आधा आकाश सर को उठा के चले, हम विश्व की महिला नई नई प्रगति की ओर चले, ने कंधों पर आधा आकाश.
Thank you very much. That was extremely inspiring. To introduce Meena Seshu's work, I shouldn't say introduce, because the vast body of work that both our honored guests have done today, it can't be explained in a small clip, but it's a little jhalak. So we're going to start again with a small clip.
TB झाले. TBचे औषध घेऊन देखील सतत सारखा आजार पडत असतो, म्हणून परत मी HIV टेस्ट करून घेतलं. मला HIV झालं. त्यानंतर मी माझ्या बायकोचं देखील करून घेतलं. त्यावेळी माझं होतं CD4 39.
घरातल्यांना पण कळालं. मग त्या घरातल्यांना सांगितलं होतं डॉक्टरने, अशा नसं आहे, तुमच्या मुलगीला तुम्ही पाठवून देऊ नका म्हणून. मग मी काय राहिली नाही. माझ्या नवऱ्यावर प्रेम होतं. मग ते कानातलं विकलं. मी कानातलं विकून रिक्षा करून मी पळून आले त्यांच्याबरोबर, आणि ते पैसे थोडे होते ते त्यांचा दवाखाना पण मी केले.
डॉक्टरने आम्हाला सल्ला दिला,
बाळाला कशाला जन्म देताय, बाळाला पण होईल.
पण डॉक्टरला माहित नव्हतं. आम्हाला संग्राम संस्था
औषध पुरवठा झाला. आम्हाला
पुरवठा होऊन आमची मुलगी निगेटिव्ह,
आणि त्यांनी आम्हाला आधार दिलता, तुम्हाला तुमच्या बाळाला काय होत नाही, आम्ही तुम्हाला साथ देतो म्हणून.
आमचा हक्क आहे. आम्हाला एक मूल तरी आम्हाला पाहिजेच होतं.
आणि आता बाळ माझं चांगलं आहे. आता तशीच परमेश्वरानं आमच्याकडे बघितलंय बघा. मी त्या मॅडमचं एक नाही पाया पडली की माझ्या मुलगीला काय झालेलं नाही, ती बरं आहे. भले आम्हाला दोघांना असून दे, पण आमच्या पोरगीला नाही ना, त्याच्यात आम्हाला आनंद आहे. मी परमेश्वराला ही साथ जोड मागते. मग तिथं मला अजूनपर्यंत हसते ती, काय पोरगी आहे, लग्न होऊन नवऱ्यावर पळून गेल्या. मग लव्ह मॅरेज म्हणत काय, लव्ह मॅरेज झालं की मग आता आम्हाला असं वाटतं की आम्ही जग जिंकलो.
Meena work.
A brief introduction of Meena. She is the founder and general secretary of Sampada Gramin Mahila Sangstha, which is the acronym of which is SANGRAM. The organization seeks to empower sex workers to fight for their rights. Ms. Seshu founded the organization in 1992 when its goal was to ensure that sex workers didn't spread HIV through in contact with good women, as we call. The organization today works at different levels to improve the lives of the marginalized sex workers. It attempts to dispel the myths surrounding their lives, ensures that they have access to decent health care, and teaches the women to assert themselves socially. SANGRAM has had a significant impact on the society. It has managed to convince the government clinics to change their timings so that the sex workers could do the AIDS test at a time that suits them. It has empowered women to take to the streets to protest about the poor quality of contraception that were being supplied to them by the government, even in rural areas, and thereby challenge. And also, the organization has helped create a widely respected collective of 5,000 women spread across several districts in Maharashtra and the adjoining state of Karnataka. The challenges, of course, are formidable. Ms. Seshu believes that one of the main problems of these people is that they are constantly in violent situations. So a simple thing like avoiding HIV is not always a priority. They have to deal with far worse things in their lives constantly. Ms. Seshu believes that so long as sex work is criminalized, and that's a much deeper issue, there have to be changes in the law. This unfortunate section of the population will continue to work in poor conditions, have no protection from violence, and scant access to health care. Ms. Seshu is part of UN AIDS Reference Group on Human Rights and HIV, and in 2002 she won the Human Rights Watch's highest award for her work. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meena Seshu today.
I'm going to request Justice Sujata Manohar to present Meena a plaque on her behalf. May I now request Kumar Ketkar to present Meena with flowers, please. Meena has a small little PowerPoint which sort of explains the wide work.
Actually, I did not want to do a PowerPoint. I just wanted to speak, but Sujata insists that I should do this. So here goes. The next slide. Okay, this is the sex workers. They have a special day which is called the International Sex Workers' Rights Day, and on that day they have a sex workers' pride march, and this is a photograph of the pride march in Sangli, and the caption reads, go back one sec, rehabilitation is redundant, recognize rights. And it's a rights-based program that we run in Sangram. The next slide. Okay, while we were, I don't know if this lights thing works, but anyway. Oh, okay. I'm here. So in Sangram, while we were working, we realized that if we do a rights-based approach to people who are marginalized, let them be sex workers, let them be men who have sex with men, let them be transgendered persons, the only way we can actually work with dignity with this group of people is to have some kind of Bill of Rights, and therefore the Sangram Bill of Rights was born. This was essentially born because I'm so happy Aramiti Desai is not in the audience, because as social workers we are really taught that we should guide people and we know the way, and 22, 23, 24-year-olds who pass out of TISs really believe we know everything, and that's not true, and the community actually teaches you that it is not true. And so similarly, when I started working with sex workers, I was like, I know everything. This is the oldest profession. They may not be evil women, but the profession is evil. And so I had all these Kamatipura cages that Bollywood, just like how Bollywood has affected Jyothi, it's affected me too. And I just thought I'll see Kamatipura's cages, when I started working with people in sex work, and I found that that's not true. That when you walk into the communities, you're talking to everyday people with everyday problems and more problems because of their marginalization that they face. And so the Sangram Bill of Rights was instituted. The first right we learned was people have a right to be approached with humility and respect. This is so strange that we have to say this. But the truth is that I think I come from a class that is extremely arrogant about the poor and believes that it knows everything without understanding what poverty actually means and what being poor means. And that's why we first instituted this right and said that if we have to work with a community that is so deeply marginalized by society that they're invisible in society, then it has to be that we have to approach them with humility, one, that we don't know. What would a person like me, actually I remember one Aprao Maushi, who told me, what do you know about men? You know nothing. And here you are coming to tell us what to do about men. And I said, no, there's this HIV, She said, okay, you can tell me about HIV. You can tell me about condoms. You can tell me why we need to use them. You can tell me all this technical stuff. But don't try to teach me. Because, government in those days had given us client negotiation strategies. There was this long list. So with my Naviat, I took it to the community and said, chalo, let's have a meeting. We have to talk about client negotiation strategies. And they just laughed at me. Because the truth was that I didn't even know what it means to have a client. I had no clue how clients talk to sex workers or how to negotiate with clients. It was the community that was going to teach us. But we need to have that humility and respect to accept that, and only then can actually we work with this community with some amount of success, which I think we have achieved. The next one. The people have the right to say yes or no to something that concerns them. Those days, National AIDS Control Organization was not in, it wasn't in existence. There was what is known as the Information, Education, Communication Department. And so the department would tell us, go do this. And we'd then flounder. The department, in fact, the first plan of the Maharashtra government is very clear. It says, work with sex workers such that men can be saved. They had no clue, they were not interested. There is a huge plan, it's a written plan, it's the Maharashtra NACP 1. If you see that plan, it says that very clearly that you need to work with sex workers, you need to make them use condoms, such that men can be saved, such that good women in their houses can be saved. That was the ideology of the government. It had no interest in sex workers, it had no interest in this group that we were supposed to work with. It's at that point that they'd go and tell us, go and get them tested. I'm like, go and get them tested? But why? Do they have a right to ask? No. We are the ones who know. Just go and en masse test them and then start segregating people who are HIV positive, and maybe we'll have a program for them later. It's at that time we said that the sex workers have a right to say no. They have a right to say that you cannot do this as the government of this, as citizens of this country, to us as people who live in this country. You tell us what to do, and over the years it has been proved. The entire targeted intervention program of the government of India rests on 3 groups of people for combating AIDS in this country. One is female sex workers, the other is men who have sex with men, and the third is transgendered people. They have a small program for women so that mother-to-child transmission doesn't happen like the clip you saw, but that's a very small program. Mostly for women, the understanding is, Anjali Gopalan from Delhi is here, from Naz Foundation, and I remember both of us went to NACO once, and the NACO leader told us, that's National AIDS Control Organization project director, Ms. Sujata Rao, she actually said, rural women are an epidemiological dead end. Why does government need to invest in them? That was the understanding that we are fighting. And so just remember that communities have a right to say yes or no to anything that you decide needs to be done for them sitting in Delhi. Next. People have a right to reject harmful social norms. While we were doing this, the sex workers told us, okay, now you've collectivized us, we'll do our programs. Please go talk to rural women who have no clue. It was the sex workers who made us go and work with rural women. I am deeply grateful to them for teaching me how to do it. They were the one who explained to me, said, go work with rural women because they have no clue what their husbands are doing. And in fact, they used to keep saying, you know, you need to go and teach them negotiation strategies that you've learned from us. Because I would keep complaining, how do you people manage this? At one point in time, we were giving 350,000 condoms a month. And these condoms were being used every month. And my point was, when we were doing the rural women's program, women will keep saying, men don't listen. We had family planning in this country for years and years and years. Men don't listen. So I used to keep saying, how do you women manage? What is the, give me the mantra. And they'll say, maybe you need to teach them negotiation strategies. Instead of teaching us client negotiation strategies, go teach them husband negotiation strategies. And the reason why this bill came up was that once we started working with rural women, we realized that sexuality education for young girls was an absolute must. There was no way we could escape that. But once we started teaching it, teachers, we had so many people against us. From teachers to parents, what are you teaching our children? Why are you teaching them this? There's no need. So we had from panchayat leaders to family members saying, don't teach young women anything about sex. Can teach them about reproduction. So you have this uterus with these two fallopian tubes, and that's it. And I'm like, that's it? Sexuality education? There should be something more to this, right? Why does Shah Rukh Khan appeal to me so much? What about that? No. Don't talk sex, don't talk sexuality. You can do sex education. And they had narrowed sex education down to reproduction. It was at that point we thought that we must have a right that will say that this is harmful to young girls. This is harmful to our girls. And we have to teach our girls to say no and to reject these harmful social norms that are actually not teaching them. Once we did a survey, talk about government, I'm sure Sujata Manohar will talk about it, but marital rape is still not accepted in this country. Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be the way it's going, the way the women's movement is going on fighting for it and not able to, address it. But when we were talking to rural girls, invariably who got married and came into our clinics first time with with a first pregnancy and a HIV positive test, invariably they had no clue. Not only didn't they have a clue, I remember one girl, she was masters in history or something, married to this guy. She came into this clinic, really young, really middle class looking, not at all the profile of the kind of persons who walked into my clinic, the SANGRAM's clinic. I'm no doctor, for counseling. And she said, oh, but then nobody ever taught me to talk back. Because, my tongue didn't have the strength. माझ्या जिभेला एवढं शक्तीच नव्हती, she said. Ki ask, why is my husband so ill? What is happening to him? Will it happen to me? Will I also get HIV? How is this HIV transmitted? She just had no clue. The man dies, and after he dies, she comes back to her mother's house, and at her mother's house, she gets brought to the clinic. And by then, it's many years that she's already living with HIV. And she's, of course, not even concerned about herself. She's worried about the son of hers. Please test my son. Is he HIV positive or not? That's what I've come here for. So please remember that people have a right to reject harmful social norms because they harm them. Next one. People have a right to stand up and change the balance of power, which is what Jyothi was also talking about, which I think the women's movement has been saying for a long time now. We need a change in power. And we don't mean that Sonia Gandhi should change and who's the other guy? Whoever takes over. What we mean is within families, within our lives, we need a change in power. If we don't have this change in power, women's movement will have failed in its duty. We women are trying to encourage women, to strengthen them. Empowerment means strength. Empowerment is such a loosely used word. It means to strengthen a woman to fight back. To strengthen a woman to ask the question, why? Next one. This bill came about because, suddenly the evangelical community in the United States of America decided that they should come and save us Indians because we were talking about rights of sex workers. And what actually happened was they came to the community and raided and rescued people at which point in time, and I don't mean the savers that you people are talking about, because I said, oh my God, they've got a tagline about savers, but ours is savers from saviors, because we are being saved indiscriminately by people who have no clue and no understanding of the kind of work we do or what it means to us. Next one. And of course, I deeply believe this, and this is my last slide. I deeply and deeply believe that people have a right to exist the way they want to exist. And we cannot sit in judgment on it, because the biggest problem for people with HIV, people who are in sex work, people who are in homosexual relationships, people who are hijda and transgendered people, the biggest problem is we do not want to allow them to exist in our worlds like the way they want to exist. Either we throw them out of our world and keep them there, or we try to eliminate them. And I think this judgmental attitude is hugely violent against these communities and should be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Meena. Thank you, Meena, and thank you, Jyothi. I think it's because of wonderful women like you that society still has a semblance of balance. I think we have a long way to go in correcting things, and we know that the justice system does not work. And so we now come to that part of the program which makes us introspect and think about what is happening, what is going wrong, and whether there are any solutions. Before I invite Justice Sujata Manohar to speak about it and deliver her keynote address, may I request Aditi Kothari to introduce her, please.
Hello everyone. You know, I thought I don't normally like to read from a piece of paper, but when I read this, I just realized Justice Manohar is so accomplished that there is no way you can remember everything, and I don't want to miss out anything. So I'm going to start with something that we've written down here. Justice Manohar has the distinction of being the first lady judge of the Bombay High Court and the first lady Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court and the Kerala High Court. She was appointed as the judge of the Supreme Court of India in '94 and retired from there in '99. Born into a family with a strong legal background, her father was Chief Justice of High Court in Gujarat. Justice Manohar graduated from Elphinstone College in the early 50s and then went to Lady Margaret Hall, Oxford, where she read philosophy, politics and economics. Soon after this, she was called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn, having simultaneously passed all papers in parts 1 and 2 of the bar exam. But to practice what she had learned, she returned to Mumbai in 1958. In her early years, Justice Manohar primarily dealt with commercial matters, but also took many family law cases under legal aid schemes. This was before India had a formal state legal aid program, so she voluntarily associated herself with over 30 NGOs. These years were packed with a substantial amount of public interest and pro bono work. Justice Manohar has done much to improve the situation of women in our country over her decades-long career. In 2000, she became a member of the National Human Rights Commission. Her focal point of work was trafficking, women's issues, and AIDS. She is also the chairperson of the Committee on Feminism and International Law of the International Law Association. She is consultant to the UN Expert Group on Trafficking and was consultant to a UN Expert Group on Women, Peace and Security. She was also on the Consultation Group of Judges formed in 2007 by the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights for the enforcement of human rights through domestic courts. Her ladyship was also chairperson of the Committee of Judges set up by the Bombay High Court to establish family courts in Maharashtra. I think with that, I'm going to hand it to Justice Manohar.
Let me begin by saying how delighted I am to participate with all of you in this celebration of the International Women's Day. And I thank Sujata Dalal for inviting me to this function. I remember a story about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was appointed a judge of the US Supreme Court. And she was asked when she was appointed, how does it feel to be the second woman in the US Supreme Court? And she said, well, it feels great, but I will feel much happier when people stop counting. So I think that also applies to International Women's Day. We will celebrate the day when we don't have to celebrate. I'm really happy that Moneylife Foundation is here. It has started work in educating women on financial matters, basically, because financial literacy is the key to women's empowerment. Without it, women do not have the ability to enjoy their constitutionally guaranteed rights, nor can they enforce their rights. Economic empowerment and education alone can empower women to insist on more just laws and their proper enforcement. Women also need to be socially and economically empowered to battle unjust customs, deprivations, and unfair beliefs and practices. And I'm therefore very happy that two outstanding women who have striven over the years for women's social empowerment are being honored today. And I would like to congratulate both of them on behalf of all of us. I'm very familiar with the work of Jyothi Mhapsekar and her Stree Mukti Sanghatnana. If I remember rightly, about 30 years back, at the centenary of social conference of Justice Ranade, she had staged her play Mulgi Jari Ho, and I had the privilege of watching it. I think that was in the very early days of the play. And I hope that it is now updated to include families which name their daughters Nakoshi. So it is a very ongoing process, and the way she conveys the message, as you saw from the little clip that you saw, is really very effective. Meena Seshu has worked for the empowerment of trafficked women and educating the public on HIV/AIDS related stigmas. When I was in the National Human Rights Commission, one of the cases which we dealt with was of two children in Kerala who were removed from the school as soon as the parents came to know that they're both suffering from HIV/AIDS. And it took a lot of effort and persuasion and education of parents on the part of NHRC plus some local NGOs to get the school to accept these children. So she is working in a very vital area, and I wish her all success. Now, for better justice to women, what do we need? First of all, we need laws which are just and which can be properly understood and enforced. You have seen the confusion about the age of consent, if you have heard the TV discussions recently. So what first of all we need is clear laws which take into account the needs of the society, and they're framed properly so that they can be properly implemented. Then we also need public interest groups who are willing to use these laws and activate society to enforce them. Our present concern has been about criminal justice system and offenses against women. So here we basically need to sensitize police. First, that they will register FIRs. Second, that they will investigate speedily and properly. And we need court procedures that support the victim, that have special provisions for witness protection. And we need to review our punishments and whether we need to have different kinds of punishments, not just retributory. Reformative, I think, is a big question mark, and whether we can have compensatory provisions or community service provisions. This is an area which is being debated internationally, and I think we need to participate in that debate. As I told you, newspapers and electronic media have now taken to reporting crime in a big way. And crimes against women seem to occupy center stage. The rape of a young woman in a Delhi bus has now opened a Pandora's box of previously unreported rapes. Every day you see so many girls, minors, women all being raped. I'm sure the rapes were happening earlier, but the focus now is on these rapes, especially rapes of minors. Reports of molestation of women in public places, dowry deaths, suicides by women, and the so-called honor killings now appear to be on the increase. Khap panchayats openly order killing of couples married inappropriately as perceived by them. This has now been brought home to the public through that program Satyameva Jayate. But these complaints were coming before NHRC about 10 years ago. And we tried our best, whatever was possible. By the time the complaints came, it was usually too late. But this is what happens. Forced marriages of teenagers who have a different outlook from their parents are also on the increase, especially in the north and amongst NRIs. So it is a sad comment on the prevailing values and what I call uncultural practices, even 62 years after promulgation of the Constitution. The last century faced unprecedented violence. This has affected our thinking, our living, our recreation and entertainment, the video games that children play, and the violence in the streets, in the media, and in the home. Our Constitution promised equality and non-discrimination on the ground of sex. But we forgot that one needs an open, tolerant, and generous society willing to accept different attitudes and viewpoints. A society with well-established law and order for these constitutional values to prevail. Meena, Seshu also talked about our unwillingness to accept different points of view and different lifestyles. We need to have much more tolerance than we have displayed lately. The fundamental freedoms, particularly freedom of expression, guaranteed by the Constitution, presumably would include freedom for women to dress either in Indian clothes of all varieties, or a Western t-shirt and jeans, or even an off-shoulder dress. In fact, the range of clothes one sees in this country is seldom seen elsewhere. Yet we now have problems. One may say that this freedom should not outrage the modesty of a man. But we have in this country men living in several past centuries, as well as those living in the present, the supposed future, and those aping the Western culture as perceived by them. None has the right to take law in his own hands and molest, rape, or kill women who do not conform to his ideas. The presence of such a trend, which affects women's safety, indicates absence of law and order and failure of the state to provide security to its citizens, especially women. So a well-policed, secure state is what we want, and which is today lacking. Customs that deny equal respect to women are prevalent in every part of the country, in every community, caste, or creed. An obsessive desire for a male child is now fulfilled by technology. A prenatal sex determination test can detect, and it usually leads to the elimination of a female fetus. And there are older and customary ways of getting rid of a newborn baby girl. You must have seen the recent statistics about disparity in the sex ratio of children who are born. In the north, in Punjab, Haryana, I think it is 822 girls to about 1,000 boys. Maharashtra is slightly better, 922 to 1,000. But the fact that you have these disparities in its turn creates problems which we don't realize. For example, in Punjab and Haryana, which are the worst affected, there is so much shortage of girls that people there purchase girls from the northeast and bring them to Punjab, Haryana as slaves, and they service all the men in the family, plus they do all the work. And these girls' lifespan is considerably shortened in the process. So it has given rise to a kind of slavery because of this sex discrimination at birth, or rather elimination of girl child. And this is also directly linked to the demand for dowry. In my view, that is the biggest culprit that we have in our society. And unfortunately, dowry demand is growing. It is not reducing. In spite of laws that we have had since the 80s and even earlier, it has had no impact because the society does not want elimination of dowry, and it is the greatest enemy of a girl child. Because people think that dowry is the best way of getting a better lifestyle without having to do anything. Parents of young women are forced by community pressure and a false sense of prestige into giving a huge dowry, ostentatious gifts, and having a lavish wedding. We see them every day. Even when this results in a life spent in debt and penury. There are also heinous dowry-related crimes, as we all know, dowry debts, suicides, unspeakable cruelty. So this is what we have brought upon ourselves. Educated women working outside their homes are also insecure, especially if work requires long hours or travel. Higher education for women has also become a problem in the rural areas for the same reason. They think it is unsafe for young women to travel long distances in search of higher education. Sexual harassment is on the increase, and so is violence at the workplace. Domestic violence is now taking place outside the home also. And researchers from the National Institute for Occupational Safety in the US found that 22% of workplace homicides amongst women were a result of an intimate partner violence. However, our National Crime Records Bureau says that Indian women are more subject to violence inside their homes rather than outside. There were 228,650 incidents of domestic violence reported a year ago. And these are incidents which were recorded. A large number of FIRs relating to domestic violence are not recorded by the police at all. They tell the women to go home and say, this is ghar ka mamla hai, you don't come to us. This is not our job. Then, just as Dowry Prohibition Act has not checked dowry, we must be careful that Domestic Violence Act also doesn't go the same way, because it may not check domestic violence unless we have the support system which is envisaged under the Act. And that support system, protection officers, that has not been set up properly at all, and it is non-functional. So this is another area where we should not be happy just with having a law. We have to see that it is all the required machinery is set up, and that somebody is there to supervise how that law actually works. Now, also our attitude to domestic violence needs to change, because how often do parents not tell a woman who comes to them complaining of violence in the house that, well, you have to suffer in silence, that is your fate, we got you married and that's that, and don't come to us. And this has led to so many suicides amongst women. I think those who are working in this area know the extent of this problem. Illegal trafficking in women and girls is also not receiving adequate attention. We have Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, which is badly in need of amendments. In NHRC, we had suggested that the act should focus on the victim of trafficking rather than on punishing them, because today what is happening is that it is the trafficked women who come before the court instead of the people who procure these girls and sell them into this trade. So this entire attitude here needs change, and the method of rescue and rehabilitation also needs a basic change. We don't have a proper mechanism which respects a woman's human rights when rescue operations are carried out, and we have no worthwhile rehabilitation programs so that these women, even if they are sent to a women's home, ultimately end back in the same trade. The only organization I know which had a good program was an organization called Prajwala in Hyderabad, where these women who are rescued are taught business and trade, and they form small groups to manufacture various items, and they are making good money and they are happy with the life they lead. But this sort of a program is not there in any government institution. Now let me come to the Indian Penal Code and the discussions we have been having about changes which are required. Justice Verma Committee has made detailed recommendations for change, and yet in a hurry we had an ordinance passed which accepted some suggestions, did not accept others. So we must have a proper analysis of what are the changes we require and why we require them. Fortunately, it has brought out the fact that there are various kinds of sexual assaults which are today not covered by the penal code at all, and we need to have a more detailed provision, rape being only one of them. Then there was a whole debate, now there is a whole debate going on about the age of consent, because under section, I think, 375 of the penal code, it is said that having sex relations with a girl below the age of 16 is statutory rape. We also have, last year another act was passed, I don't know how many of you had heard of it till now, which was Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. That was last year. And in that act, a child is defined as a person below 18, and there are various sex offences against such a child which are made punishable. Now, the Juvenile Justice Act has its own age up to which a person is considered a child. And we have a Child Marriages Restraint Act where there is an age specified. There are different marriage laws which specify ages of marriage. Nobody has really sat down with all these laws and decided what should be the appropriate age at which we can consider a child as no longer a child but an adult. Or should it vary with the kind of offense that we have in mind? I think this is sociologists. We need inputs from sociologists for this purpose to tell us which would be the right thing to do. Internationally, they found that the age of consent in different laws in different countries varies from 13 to 18. So it's a very wide range. And what range do we want? for our laws? And should we have the same age for the offense of rape or for other sexual assaults, or should we have the same age or a different age for different kinds of offenses? So this is a problem on which we need a proper understanding and a proper resolution of different points of view. And the other problem was about marital rape. I am really shocked that the government thinks that we cannot have marital rape. Even a country like Nepal, which has the same penal code that we have, verbatim the same, has interpreted this law to mean that the law cannot be interpreted in a manner which is contrary to the International Covenant on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and therefore they have said that this law clearly does not make marital rape legal. It is illegal, and they have punished marital rape. So, but we are lagging behind even Nepal in this area. So this is another problem. Then the whole debate about death sentence. Burma panel, in my view, rightly said that we should not have death penalty for an offense like this. We can imprison a person for life, and life will mean his entire life, and in some cases at least 20 years. So that is, we like to have the best of both worlds. On the one hand, we have on our statute book death penalty for certain offenses, and at the same time internationally we tell everyone that, well, yes, we do have death penalty, but the Supreme Court has said it has to be only in the rarest of rare cases, and we have not imposed death penalty for so many years. They will not be able to say it now because 2 sentences have been carried out. But you can't have an attitude like this. If you have death penalty, you enforce it. Otherwise, don't have it and have something else in its place. But this kind of a debate also needs to be addressed, and this is where civil society also needs to participate in the kind of debate as to what kind of a law we want. We also found, while I was in the Supreme Court, I think you talked about Vishaka judgment, that there was really no law at all to cover sexual harassment. And most people don't take it seriously. Every time a woman, we had several complaints from women in the National Human Rights Commission after the Vishaka judgment complaining about harassment. And the reaction always is, well, it was a joke, it should not be taken too seriously. Or the other reaction was that this woman was no good at her work. We had decided not to promote her, and that is why now she's complaining about sexual harassment. This is another typical reaction. That is why we had said that we need a committee to which a woman can go and complain, and that committee should have women on it who will understand the situation she is in, and an NGO who is familiar with this kind of harassment that a woman can suffer from, and they should decide independently whether there is a proper ground for complaint or not. And then again, when the management is a little sympathetic, they offer, if it's a big organization, they offer that we will transfer the woman. Nobody thinks of transferring the man who is really the guilty party. So that is another problem that we face. So there's a whole attitudinal problem behind all the problems that women suffer from. So now, fortunately, we are about to have a law. I think we had only framed guidelines saying that these will prevail until a proper law is framed. Well, it has really taken a very long time, I think about more than 15 years. And finally some law is coming into being. Unfortunately, I have not seen it, so I don't wish to comment on it. But 1 or 2 bills which I had seen earlier were not very satisfactory. I hope this is better. Then let me come to some of the well, I won't go into all the other laws as far as crimes against women are concerned. Since it's a Moneylife Foundation, we have 5 minutes. I would like to touch upon civil laws which affect women's equality in the workplace. Because you see, Constitution has guaranteed equality and non-discrimination. But the doctrine of equality is one of the most difficult to apply in real life situations. And courts have been hard put to it to devise suitable tests to see when the equality clause is violated. Because the fact is that no two human beings are alike or equal in all respects. They have different abilities, unequal qualifications, and unequal equipment. So the courts have evolved some propositions on the basis of which equality and non-discrimination can be tested. And the test was laid down in 1958 in Dalmia's case, where the court said that discrimination is unconstitutional, but it is permissible to classify individuals into different groups on the basis of certain criteria within the same group, such as, for example, you can have a group of handicapped people or a group of people who possess a certain educational qualification, and so on. So but this criteria for differentiation must have some relevance to the work which is involved. They are called intelligible differentia. And to give an obvious example, I talked about handicapped people. All mentally handicapped can be classified as one group if a legislation is proposed giving them certain special rights or protection, or you can have for blind children a special provision when they take examinations as to how they should write their paper and so on. In that well-known air hostess case of Nargesh Mirza and others, where the differential conditions of service were prescribed for air hostesses, it was submitted by Air India that there was no discrimination and no violation of the equality clause, because the air hostesses had been classified as one group on the basis of their sex, which was a relevant basis for differentiation looking to their duties as air hostesses. It was a sex-based classification and not discrimination on the ground of sex. It's a little, at least I find it a little difficult to understand that. Anyway, so, but the court fortunately held that some of the service conditions were arbitrary and unreasonable and struck them down. Not on the ground of discrimination, but on the ground of unreasonableness. Then, Article 14, which provides equality for everybody on the ground of various grounds, including the ground of sex, has been invoked in a very wide range of cases before the courts. These may be cases relating to service matters, cases challenging executive action, with grants of contracts by the government, with rules of admission to educational institutions, imposition of tax, from tax. The categories are never closed. A large number of cases in the last decade have been fought on the doctrine of equal pay for equal work, which the court says is a part of our fundamental rights. But here the problem is in deciding what is equal work. It is usually women who get lower pay, and the work may not be identical. There may be some small differences. The question is whether these differences justify a lower pay for women or not. And the European Court of Human Rights has evolved a standard which is known as the worth of the work, which takes into account everything which goes into that work in order to compare it with the work that men do. And then they decide whether there is discrimination or whether the work was such that a lower pay was justified. An obvious case in our country is in the case of agricultural workers, where women get much lower pay because the men do the plowing and the women sow the seeds. Both work for the same hours, but the woman gets much lower pay. And the question is she really doing work which is easier or less hard? If the answer is no, then this is a clear violation of her constitutional rights. There has been a lot of case law on this subject. I think I'll just very briefly deal with one or two cases abroad where the criteria which were laid down for appointment were such that they favored men. For example, there was an advertisement for the post of a guard where the height and weight prescriptions were laid down, and no woman could comply with those. And this was challenged in a case called Dothard versus Rawlinson. And the Supreme Court of the United States split 3 ways over these qualifications. But ultimately, they all agreed that these qualifications, as far as guards are concerned, are discriminatory and against women. In one of the cases, the female employees were asked to pay much more, a much higher contribution towards their pension than the men employees. And the reason advanced by the company was that, well, women live much longer, so we will have to pay them pension over a longer period of time, so we are justified in asking them to contribute more. Fortunately, this was also struck down. So these are some of the work-related legal issues that I have dealt with. I don't have to say anything more to this gathering. The field, I think, is in many ways, I find it's infinite. You have all kinds of problems in every area, and I think it is time that we as women decide that at least in our families and the way we bring up our daughters and our sons, we will make sure that the men have the right kind of an attitude, and that you treat your sons and your daughters equally in your own house. At least that is in our hands, and then we can ask for just laws and equal laws. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Sujata would present a memento to Justice Sujata Manohar, please.
A small memento for you.